Hello. So next up is Hans von Knut, the creative director of Bird Island, and he's going to talk about top 20 things not to do to survive as an indie studio. So hope you are excited.
Hello, everybody. The mic is working. Awesome. So really great to see so many people here. Just to get a quick feel for who you are. Like, how many of you are like solo developers or small team indie developers or something like that? Most of you, roughly. Okay. How many of you are concerned about surviving? So at least half, if not a bit more. Okay, it's the perfect audience. You came to the right place. So, because some of the challenges you're facing and some of the challenges I've been facing through the years is that, especially the last 5-6 years, we have been bombarded with things we needed to do to become successful. I mean, there are hundreds of posts each day on LinkedIn and X and whatever about all the things we should do, all the things we should remember, all the services we should buy, all the consultants we should hire to make sure we get X, Y, Z, and so on nailed perfectly. Because if not, we're going to fail. But carrying all of these things out takes time, and some of them also cost money. And we don't have a lot of money. And we also don't have a lot of time. And time is our most valuable resource because we are a small team. The more time we spend on doing the projects, the better they become. So your time and how well you spend it is how well you survive. It is that simple. So how can we increase your survivability by being more effective? Not effective as in working faster, but effective in figuring out what not to do. Because when you read the success stories, again, peddlers on websites or interviews and so on, many of them well-meaning. They write about what went right. Back in the days, there was postmortem on Gamma Sutra, when it was called that, which was also games which didn't perform well or totally failed. And they were very interesting to read, but nowadays it's mostly the success stories that gets out there. And they said, you should do all this right because we did it and work, and all of these things you did wrong, and you shouldn't do them wrong because it made it harder for us when we succeeded. But here comes the math. 20%, I believe, projects right now go into production. That might even be high. 20% of demos might go into production these days. It might be high. I don't know the exact number. Maybe 5% of all the games that actually launches breaks even. I can't remember what the number is right now. So the chance of you succeeding is pretty low. The chance of the demo you're working on even getting launched is pretty low. So from the perspective of a studio, not the individual, not the employee, not the person fighting to reach a deadline, not somebody distressed because their manager, me, or one of you, put too many things on their table, not from their perspective, very important to communicate, but from the perspective of the founders or the CEO or the group of people gathering in a basement and trying to do a game, then time is money, and the less you can spend time on which is not crucial, the better. And if you follow all these advices on, we did this right, you should do it, we did all this wrong, you should change it, then my claim is you would never be able to get to do the demo or get the game to production or get the game to be very successful and earn a lot of money because you spent time on things they didn't spend time on, even though they became a success. My claim is that the less things you do well, the bigger chance is that you get the demo done, that you get the demo launched, and that you potentially earn a lot of money. So failing to plan is planning to fail, yes. The more experience you get, the better you become at looking forward. But if you spend so much time on planning your success, doing everything correct, then you will never get the game out there. So, who am I and what do I know? Well, I haven't done a hit. Well, technically I have. I have around 10,000 active players on my games every day. But they are a lot of my work for hire projects, things I've done for customers and so on. So my own games, Tales from the Void, Broken Lines, Gerda, we also did a mobile game, has not become breakaway hits. They have been the games that has done well, sold a decent amount of copies. I had a mobile title which had around 1 million downloads. These games have sold between 20,000 to 100,000 copies across platforms and so forth. I should really not whine about anything. I'm happy. It has been fun. It's still fun, and we keep getting better and better at making games. But we also survived for a reason without a hit. We did Broken Lines. It did well. Oh, there's loading issues. Anyway, it's a turn-based tactical game. We go tactics, so it's kind of turn-based, but it's also real-time. Which, oh, it's a little bit slow. There we go. We did Gerda, Flame in the Winter, an RPG without combat, which had a very high Steam and Metacritic rating, a lot of good reviews, a lot of reviews on websites and so forth. A lot of awards. It didn't sell enough for us to become rich, but it certainly did well, and we're very happy with it. And we're working on some new games, typically narrative-driven games. This is a card battler with exploration. Hades meets, I don't know, Divinity, something like that, just to be kind of lofty and hopeful. We're also working on a 80s-inspired sailing RPG, and we're also working on a Viking-themed run-based RPG and stuff like that. All of them demos. But we haven't done yet like this total breakaway hit. So that's what we're working on. But we've done also a shitload of projects, work for hire projects, mobile games, web games, PC games, platform games, installation games. We launched more than 50 projects across at least 10 different engines. So we've been through this process a lot of times. Ideation, concept, prototype, demo, development, production, launch, legal, blah, blah, blah. Grow up and down in size several times and so forth. So we kind of learned the hard way what we shouldn't waste time on by learning the hard way what has been a waste of time. And now I will try to give this gift to you. I initially wrote it was top 20 things. Then I started working on the talk, and I started reaching out to other developers to hear their tips, and the list kind of grew. So I will bombard you with more than that, and some of them will be a bit quick, but for the Q&A afterwards, then you can ask questions to elaborate. So, what shouldn't you be doing? Well, in regards to doing a company, don't start an indie studio. It is very, very simple. Don't do it unless you've learned something first. I started an indie studio before I had worked really in an industry. I had worked in the industry but not with games. It meant my learning curve was much slower. I've met other CEOs. We started working in a big or medium-sized studio and then went out to do their own company. So the learning curve the first few years were much more rapid. So don't start an indie studio as the first thing you do. I hope I'm not stepping on too many people's feelings here. In general, I might say things which is a little bit provocative, but that's at least our experience. And also, don't speak the truth. You should never depict where you are when you talk about your company or your game. One of the times we started accelerating our outreach, our performance, our signing with publishers and so on, is when we started painting the truth in a little bit more positive light. You know, not like, where are we now, but where are we going to be when we sign with you, because that's going to be at least in 4 months, because doing a contract takes forever. So never speak the truth, always speak the hope for the truth. It's kind of also called fake it until you make it and so on. Of course, you shouldn't lie, but there's certainly something about don't undersell yourself. Talk about what you hope for and what you believe in, not whether this is kind of an ugly blue right now and I'm going to change it. And then you should never listen to others. You should never listen to other successful devs, at least, because Subset Games is a very good example. People usually take these really cool studios when they talk about what you should do. There's a lovely long article about how Subset Games prototype for Into the Breach. It's beautiful. It's a fucking study in iteration and design, and I've played 50 hours plus of Into the Breach. It's a fantastic game. I also love the FTL. But they could only do it because they made FTL and they had a shitload of money. And they spent 2 or 3 years just before they had the first prototype that they could take into demo production. You can't do that. You can't learn from people who have too much money when you do your ideation and your prototyping process. Then you're going to fail, you're going to flop around because it's really cool. It's really cool to flop around. It's really cool to try a shitload of things. You just don't have the time. So don't listen to people who have too many money and done really cool stuff. Don't register or patent your IP. This is a very simple thing. You keep getting scams about, oh, we can trademark your stuff. How is your IP protected? Your names, blah, blah, blah. Seek here, blah, blah. It only costs. There's no reason to do it at all. Because as soon as you launch a reveal on Steam, your name of the game is protected unless somebody used that game before. And even if they did, I mean, you can kind of get away. It's been a couple of years and your games are different. So no reason to do it. And you shouldn't even keep your IP. You should never keep your IP. Everybody says, keep your IP, keep your IP. They're the ones who can afford to focus on keeping the IP. If keeping the IP is what blocks a contract with a publisher or project funder that allows you to take the game into production, never say no. You can kind of negotiate, you can use it to get more money or whatever. You should never try to keep your IP because 5% of the games into production, which was only 20% of the games that are being prototyped, ever becomes a successful success, financial success. It's only the financial successive titles where the developers get exploited over the IP. So most of the people will never get in that situation. We did a game, God and Flame in winter. We did it with Donut. We did a collaboration deal, a co-production deal. It was our demo, it was our game, but we put the IP in the contract that we owned it together. When we then had made the game, it didn't do well enough for them to finance a sequel. And that was okay, because if that was the case, then it might also not do us well enough to finance a sequel, because sequels don't perform. Unless you have a shitload of money and can do a lot of cool stuff. Sequels don't perform. If you're a little studio and you do a little title which is semi-successful or decently successful, then if you make a number 2, it's probably gonna perform worse than if you do a new game that shares a lot of the same mechanics, but you call it something else. Sequels died with Banner Saga. We could see Banner Saga, a very successful series. It failed better games. Their sequels failed. In around 16, 18, 19, 20, we kept seeing indie games sequels fail unless it was very budget or very sought after. Okay, yes, the guy behind Binding of Isaac, when he did a new game, it did well, but it wasn't Binding of Isaac 2. Okay, Slay the Spire 2 did really well, yeah, but of course Slay the Spire 2 does well. I mean, whatever. But smaller stuff doesn't matter. Do another game with the same mechanics, same art style, same universe, call it something else. Don't keep the IP. Doesn't matter. Don't grow the team. Literally don't grow the team. If you love to run, I will get back to that. I won't spoil that now. Now, some years ago, covering everything in-house, growing the team, be a nice investment case, make sure you could get a big investment deal, get a lot of money because you had a lot of employees, you had a high turnover, and blah, blah, blah. That was the name of the game. Nowadays, doesn't work. You're gonna kill yourself because your liquidity gonna die, your financial runway is gonna die. At one point, we were 25 for several years. I ended spending all my time selling and no time doing games. As soon as you get over 10 persons, you have to have layers of management. You can't turn the chair and talk. I would say if you're an indie developer and likes doing games, anything more than 10 will severely hurt your enjoyment in making games. You can do outsourcers. You can do consultants, you can scale the game to fit, you can make the game over a longer time. I wouldn't scale the company ever. But if you want to do an investment case, fair enough, but yeah. Don't keep the team between productions. This sounds really, really mean. For 5 years, we ran with a philosophy of not firing anybody between productions. It works if you always have a game in production, but as soon as the signing freeze happened in 23, and then it will stay alive until 25, and then it will stay alive until after 25, and then it will stay alive until 27, it doesn't rhyme, but it's true, then we are in a situation where the chance of you getting a project funding or an investment deal is very slim, and you need a much smaller team when you do a prototype or demo, and a bigger team when you're in production. But if you staff up in production, you have to scale down again when the production is done and you go back into demo prototyping, or you're gonna fail financially. You're gonna run out of money. Don't look for investment when you need it. It's too late, especially these days. You should look for investment when you totally don't need it, or you should look for investment after you need it and you actually survived. Right now it takes so long to do investment, so going to conferences and trying to get investment deals when you really need the money is almost always a losing battle. You're not gonna land anything, you're just wasting your time on doing pitch decks, keep updating them and doing meetings, so on. Zero will come out of it. If you have a game which has a lot of traction, and you are issue with your liquidity, okay, if you have your wish list is growing gigantically, you have a game on a Steam festival that does great, okay, then we can talk about it. But in general, if you're kind of struggling and you have a demo that you're soon going to release and you don't have anything to show, nobody's going to sign with you anything because the bar is so high these days. So don't waste time on it. Spend your time on doing the demo good, launching it, getting audience traction. Then you can go back and talk with the investors, and then they will be much more happy to talk with you. Don't use a lawyer. Seriously, don't use a lawyer. The money I've spent on a lawyer, which gave bad advice in regarding to different financial or legal things, compared to the money I have lost by not using a lawyer for checking publishing deals, is totally different. I've lost zero on being shafted in publishing deals with contracts I didn't have a lawyer look at, and I've lost a lot of money on getting lawyers to do legal stuff, which ended up not being totally correct anyway, and then I had to get another lawyer to do it and so forth. Nowadays with AI, you can get them to crunch through the contract and get kind of some good pointers. You can get some of these open contracts from Outer Sloth and from Raw Fury and some others, which are kind of putting it out there so you can check them out. You can Google what the different terms are, and then you can call your friend, which did a publishing deal with somebody, and get them to look at it. That totally works. Don't spend 10,000 euros to get a lawyer to look through it. It's not worth. I've never lost money on a publishing deal where I negotiated the contract myself. The only places where I got shafted, I didn't really get shafted, but the only places where I lost something was places where I already knew in the contract, if this happens, I will lose something. And then when it happened, I knew it, fair enough. That was just a deal. I could negotiate something better. Don't use a lawyer. And don't get a fancy office. It's expensive, it's inflexible. We have a indie basement, it's a bit scruffy. We have plenty of space, it's cheap. I can scale up and down. So when we're more, we have room. When we're less, we can still pay it. Again, lean, financial runway, fancy office, it's not that important. Now, this is provocative. Don't do transparency with employees. You know the good old movie quote with, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. One of the bigger mistakes I did at one point was starting being transparent about the financial situation and the runway. We were a studio that often had a runway of 1 year. We had money 1 year ahead because we're also doing work for hire and so on. At one point, we only had half a year of runway. And then when I presented that on a bi-weekly information meeting, which we have in my studio, then several employees turned in sick for 2 weeks because of stress. So because I told them that we had money for half a year, but it is not a big problem, and we're going to land something, and then we're going to have money for time again. That stressed them out so much because they were worried to get fired that they then turned in sick and was away for 2 weeks, each of them. And that meant that they didn't work for 2 weeks, which hurt the company a lot financially because we missed the deadline and so forth. And so transparency is good? No, because A, not everybody can handle uncertainty. That's just how it is. It's not a fault, that's just how it is. B, not everybody knows how the money situation is in a small studio, so they don't know that it's not a problem, or that it's a problem, but it's always been a problem. That's just how it is. So transparency is not a good thing necessarily. And then, of course, don't spend the money before you have them. Don't ever spend your money before you actually sign the deal. I've had deals which were, we are going to sign them tomorrow, we're going to sign them in a week. I was shaking hands with a big established publisher at, I think it was Gamescom 1 year. We are signing in 2 weeks, this is a budget, and then they went radio silent. I've had work for hire games where we were to do a big expansion, it would secure our runway, it got delayed 1 year. Don't spend them before you have them. Okay, I will move a little bit further because now we're soon going to run into the fun stuff. Again, don't build the company, build the game. This is totally in contrast to what the usual advice is. Build the company so you can be sustainable. But if you build the company and not the game, you end up building the company and not the game. And that is pretty boring to do unless you're into stuff like that. And if you end up building the company, then you might detach yourself from the game development and you lose your motivation. And if you are working on something boring in games, you shouldn't be an indie game developer because the salary is too low to do boring stuff. Then you should get a job in one of the bigger studios where the salary is higher for doing boring stuff. So unless you're really growth focused and want to kind of get the exit and the IPO and all that shit, okay, fair enough. But then you're also not into the game. Then you're into the growth focus and the IPO and all that stuff. So if you're into the games, do the games. And if the company is then going to run into the ground at one point because you didn't build the company, you can start a new one. I mean, and don't say yes. Yes is the most beautiful word in the world. I love it, especially in social situations or relationships or stuff like that. But in a game studio, saying no is your most important skill because yes means everything. No means focus. So that's just a little thing. Yes hurts. No hurts, but say no more than yes. Sorry, very boring. Okay, product strategy. We'll move a little bit faster here. Don't sell game tools unless you want to do game tools. You're going to divide your focus. Just saying, we did it. Divided focus. You don't earn a lot on Unity Asset Store unless you're a solo developer. Don't focus on selling your tools you develop internally as game tools unless that's a business you're going to run. Don't do work for hire with apps or webs or business-to-business tool projects. They are incredibly boring. Really, really boring. Don't go there because then you're a full-stack web developer doing them. You will get hired by that company anyway for double the pay. Don't go there. We even at one point got approached by a company that wanted us to do some work on their stuff, and we could see they might just use it to kind of poach our employees, so we turned it down. Don't do online multiplayer. Don't go there. Just saying. It's awful. 80% of your time is spent on online multiplayer, 20% on game. No, that's not true. Just really know what you're doing. Don't work on things you don't like. Again, if you are to work on things you don't like, get a higher paid job in a big company and do it. If you work as an indie developer for some reason or another, you're crazy, you're driven by inspiration, creativity, you just think it's fun, do that. And then if it doesn't work out, close the company, start a new one, or try to get a job in a company with experience. Don't do a big game. You heard it before, it's not really controversial, so fuck it. Don't create the game before the Steam page. Now this is a fun one. I went in a studio which they did fake AI post Steam capsules. They put in on Facebook, then they did AP testing, and then they moved on to making the game that performed the best. That's kind of mobile approach. I wouldn't do that. But seriously, If you don't have an idea what's going to be on Steam page when you start doing the game, you have no focus. I haven't done this yet. I would love that I was able to do it. I'm going to try to learn it one day. I think this is a really cool trick. Try it, if it's possible. Advice. Don't do different genres. Every time you do a new genre, it's fun and excitement, and you are making thousands of errors. And it takes forever. When you've learned, when you've done one game, one genre, you learn so much, your next in that genre will be much faster. Don't do different genres. You're going to bump yourself back to zero. It's going to be frustrating every time. You're never going to do a really good demo, a really good game. And don't innovate. What is innovation? Yes, of course you should innovate. Sony made a rule back in the day, one new thing only. That was when they made the VHS, I think. They said, it's like a tape, and it looks like a cassette tape for audio, but it plays images. One new innovation. If you have a game with two innovations, A, it's going to suck because you can't land it, you can't execute it well enough. B, the audience is going to be confused. We've done some games where there was more than one radical innovation. It was really, really hard. Don't go there. And don't make a hybrid game. Well, everybody are doing a hybrid game, I know. But we did turn-based tactics with real-time execution, the Broken Lines game, which means we did a turn-based game, and we did a real-time game. So we made two games in one. That's twice as hard as making one game. So, not really, but close. As soon as you go into the hybrid game, you are making it very hard for yourself because you have to master two genres, and you have to make much more a lot more features. So you can do it, you can pull it off. Some of the really big hits have been hybrids, but it's really, really risky. Just saying. Don't experiment. People think that iteration is experimenting. Iteration is not trying different things. Iteration is trying to achieve one thing by changing some things to make it work. You should never, ever experiment like this because you will never have a focus, you'll never be able to make a demo quickly. You should always know what you are going to do in advance. Then you can change it as you go along, but you should always have your goal. Don't do anything unique. If you do something unique, you are confusing the players, you have a hard time, the whole thing about the genre and so on. Learn by copying. I know many people who did a really cool game, but they started with copying another game and learning the ropes that way, then understanding by developing the same game themselves why it had the copy game had ended up like it had. Then they did a new game, a hybrid or a unique take on it after they'd mastered it. So they learn through copying and then innovated. I see so many people, including ourselves, who start out in a new genre or fresh out of university or whatever. I'm going to do something unique, and it always kind of sucks. Or at least 99.5% of the times. So there's no shame in learning by copying initially. And don't change popular genres. So that's kind of like a little bit contradictory. You should totally copy popular genres, but just be aware it's hard to beat the people with more money who sees a genre being a hit and then are making a Me Too game. It's hard for you to come out as early. So it can be hard to go after a blue ocean area, blue ocean water like Vampire Survivor likes. That becomes a hit. A lot of games then make something similar. If you also want to do that, you might be too late to the party. The train has left the station. But revisiting a little bit of older hits that hasn't yet been flooded or hasn't seen some new games in a while, that totally works. Okay, sales activities. Don't go to consumer conferences. It's a waste of your time. Seriously. Gamescom, developer or publish outreach, perfectly fine. Showcasing your game at the consumers, it is not worth your time. Unless the game is launched or very close to launch, or you're trying to get press and you already have pre-booked some press sightings. You're not going to convert to wish list. It's not going to be worth the money. Just saying. This is statistically proving. You can read it. You can search on the internet. The conversion rate, the time you spend, the money you spend, which could have been used for outreach on forums, on social media, on direct press pings and so on YouTubers, simply doesn't pay off. Don't hire a CEO. I tried several times to hire a CEO, so I didn't have to run the company. I could only direct the games. We never managed to do it, because the ones who are really good at selling, salesmen or really good CEOs, they have their own company. So the ones who doesn't have their own company are because they're not very good. So if you try to find somebody like that to fit the company, then usually they will not be that good, or they will be very expensive and you can't afford that. So preferably when you start an indie company, you should have all hats covered. You should have a CEO or sales-like person. You should have a really cool artist, audio or visually. You should have a really good programmer, and you should have a really good dancer and singer. That's kind of the core hat you need to have people under, and you have to cover all of them. Some of them can be covered with 1 or 2 persons if they're really versatile, or with 5 persons, but usually the good indie team is between 3 to 5, so you can cover those bases. Don't do cold canvas sales. Don't start sales in a new business. It takes at least 2 years before the phone starts ringing by itself. Well, the email starts pouring in. If you start selling in an area, you will not land a sale the first year at least. And it will take a lot of time to do pitches and presentations and offers and call people, and it's just a very, very long process. And even if you land a sale, the sales won't start pouring in by themselves for at least 2 years. So we are losing, we are missing money. We need something half a year. Don't start cold canvas selling in a new area. You're not going to make it. If you know something, if you know an area of expertise working in a certain genre, a certain audience, have people you know, focus on them. Cold canvas is really hard. Don't build your own engine. I don't have to say more. It just takes forever. If you really like it, if you're a solid developer, you know, of course you can do it and you can become a millionaire. Most people don't go there. Don't do a fancy localization system. This is kind of an in-joke. Every time we tried to do our own localization system, it took forever. Every time we did a really shitty localization system like Google Sheet, hook up in Unity and stuff like that, it was a mess to work with, but it was quick. When we counted the hours spent, because we do hour counting on everything, so we can do metrics, we could see that doing our own localization, it just took forever. And it was just an endless hole, so don't go there. Very low practical, I know. Don't create things that should be independent modules in your code spaghetti. Start looking at working in the same genre and then do modules. We are right now doing 3 different demos, RPGs, turn-based combat. We are reusing modules, pulling them down as Git sub-repos. We can very quickly prototype because we are reusing model and because we are containing our design to somewhat aligned, meaning that we don't have to innovate all the time. We don't have to do a lot of new features all the time. If you can do that stuff like that, it's really cool. But don't chase clean code, clean architecture too early. Because if you don't know what genre you're doing, you're going to redo it. You're going to refactor. You're going to change some things. And don't do a very good build pipeline too early, because you're going to change stuff and it's going to be wasted work. So everything up until demo can be dirty and should be dirty. And I mean, if that also includes using Claude Code or some outsourcing developer in some country which hacks something away, it's totally fine, because the demo doesn't go into production, the spaghetti don't matter. But if you start focusing on the same genre, then your demos can be clean because you can start reusing. That's what we're doing now, but it takes a while to get there. So, hey, don't expect too much. Don't design the game in engine. Fail fast. The fastest way to fail is not by clicking with your mouse. As soon as I start talking with somebody who starts clicking their mouse, then their mind process becomes about clicking and about squares or circles or numbers. You cannot prototype a game as fast in engine as you can on paper. You should even go lower. We have a sandbox, a real sandbox. We have a big box of sand. It's kinetic sand, sticky sand. When we do a game, we mock up the level design. We put in Legos. We take screenshot photos with a camera or do videos, and then we nail camera distance, typical level design, scope, size, flow of the game, We mock up with hand drawings, UI on top of it, and so forth. As fast as possible prototype and then throw away. Because iterating is not doing 2 weeks of prototyping in Unity and then saying it didn't work. Because you could have figured that out in half a day on paper and sand. Every time we talk about new UI, people saying, I'll go in and do something in Photoshop. No, I want pencil sketches on papers, 5 minutes. Do something for me in 5 minutes. Because in 5 minutes, 3 persons can figure out more stuff than in those 5 minutes and change it than you imagine. So if you first have 1 or 2 weeks in Photoshop and getting back with the UI, you are making so many mistakes you could have removed just by doing the paper prototype early. So that's really, really important. But then when you move into the demo, then you shouldn't design the game on paper. Because you should never recreate the design of your engine work in a game design document. We've had situations where people wanted to have all stats and all calculations and all that stuff in game design documents and in Google Sheets and all that shit, and it became a mess, and as soon as we changed something in the game, everything broke, and the updating and so forth. When you go into the development in Unity, Unreal, Godot, whatever, stay there and keep your game design brief. You don't need to recreate the game on paper. Don't do perfect design. If you do 2 pieces of perfect design, they won't fit. If you have a game with 4, 5, 6 unique things, if they're all perfect, they're not going to play ball with each other. Don't aim for 100%. You all know 80% takes 50% of the time. The last 20% takes 50% of the time. So if you do everything for 100%, then you can do half as much. If you check most games, a lot of the stuff is pretty crappy. Even very good games, they have a lot of crappy areas. A lot of areas where the UI is kind of meh, where the depth is kind of missing, where the player communication is not perfect, but it's a combination of the pieces that makes it stand out, and then they usually take 1, 2, or 3 elements where they really shine it. If you only do everything 50%, and then make that fit together, and then see if that doesn't totally suck, then you can choose which things you're taking to 80% and which very few things you're taking to 100%. But never start with 100% in anything, especially not because something will be changed down the road and then you waste so much time. And don't change things that doesn't work. I've been in development hell a few times where the game director changed things in the game because things didn't work. But as soon as you change one important chunk, then all the other things also affected, meaning you also have to change them, and then you're into an endless change spiral. So if something doesn't work, you might be able to cut it without interfering or something, or you might say, fair enough, we'll make something else work better, or you might just kind of patch it up so it barely works, and then focus on the other things. But don't get into change spiral. So, we're soon done. Don't do endless iterations on your Steam page, game art. It wasn't I myself. I've heard from several developers, they kept getting concerned about it and the conversion and so on, and they got endless iterations on that. Yeah, I don't know, but at least an advice. Don't go into QA and localization too early, also a classic thing. QA and localization is always a mess. But if you go into it too early, if you don't get your game into production or launch the game, then localization wasn't needed. So if you localize too early, you are avoiding a lot of boring stuff down the road, but a lot of the time it wouldn't have been necessary in the first place. The same with optimization. So watch out about not wanting to have everything. It's better to saying, we know this is gonna suck, and we park it there. Put it in the plan, but don't touch it yet. Very important. What to touch now, what to touch later. Don't chase every platform. There's a lot of platforms that yield 0. I mean, there was some my games, RU in Russia, that we had a PUBG that wanted to put the game on. Okay, it only took a couple of days, but it totally wasn't worth it. We had a lot of like smaller platforms where we port our games to, and it didn't pay off. I mean, Steam is good, the consoles are good, Switch if you have the stomach for porting to Switch, but apart from that, only do stuff like that if your game becomes a success. Again, keep your work contained, focus on low-hanging fruits. Don't do Hebrew, Arabic, or traditional Chinese. Just saying it's a hell unless your game doesn't have any words. That was it. Thank you for not falling asleep. This was a bombardment of a lot of small hints and tricks. Some of them might not work for you, but I would claim that most of them are relevant for you in one way or another. But now there's time for Q&A, for elaborations or contra-arguments or questions.
Hi, first of all, thank you. I had a question on office space, because you mentioned not having a fancy office. Do you think it's better if you have a relatively small team to be everyone physically together, or does remote work for the kind of work you do?
I'm bad at remote work. I'm the studio head, so of course I don't like remote work. But we do it a bit, we do hybrid, and it's fine. But some people are better at remote work than others. And also, if you want to keep the team small and hire people out in the world, then it can take a while to build up trust and also reliance on people who are truthfully reporting how much time they spend on stuff and so on. Yes, cons and pros. But my point about having a cheap office is that if you need to scale up and down the team for a shorter duration with freelancers or temps or project hirings and stuff like that, then having an office which has room for that, but also an office where there is kind of room for moving people around in different rooms when it kind of fits, is really helpful. So that's why we go for cheap, but more spacious and more flexible.
Thank you.
I believe your first point was don't start an indie studio, and I just want to clarify, are you saying go do construction or healthcare or something else entirely that's a bad idea, what we're doing in general, or do you have an alternative, like instead of starting an indie studio, do this first? I'm not sure I got that.
I would say that the chance of you succeeding as an indie studio is much higher when you've worked in another game studio before as an employee. You get into a studio that's been there some years or many years, and you learn from them a lot. Everything just goes much quicker. Even in Copenhagen, which is a hard place to start an indie studio because high living costs and so on, there recently has been quite a few games made by quite young teams, very recently graduated, like Scritchy Scratchy, and there was another one which I can't remember. Anyway, so there's a lot of cases that proves otherwise, but in general, I would say that you can much quicker take off if you had been in the industry for some years, because you just get a lot of things given, yeah.
Hello. You actually didn't talk that much about marketing, other than some like don't do this on Steam. Do you have some don't do tips for marketing and communication for indie teams?
3 years ago, I would say don't do marketing. Because we have never been good at doing marketing ourselves, because the publishers always did it. And at that point, it was publisher driven, the way we did our games. Now, with so much moving over into self-publishing because of publishers don't have money or de-risking or whatever, then everybody needs to do marketing. So I would say that everybody should do it. And you can even say nowadays, your value as an indie studio and your value as an employee is very much also multiplied by your social media followings and stuff like that. You can even become hired just by having many followers, even though you might not be that gifted. So marketing has become incredibly important. I don't like it because I would rather focus on the games, but I also have to adapt and accept the new world and not become an old dinosaur. But again, we don't have that much experience with it, so I didn't give too many don't do this in regards to marketing. Well, I can say don't do Facebook paid marketing and don't do paid influencers, but that's kind of pretty simple advice. Apart from that, then yeah. I also would say don't focus too much on Discord, because that's only a funnel into Steam, but Discord also can do something for you in the development process. But I won't be the marketing expert.
Any
Maybe a simpler question, but just carrying on from what this gentleman asked is around publishers, and if you're a startup indie, what are the do's and don'ts, or how do you qualify which is a good publisher to potentially partner with?
Whoever gives you money. Give away the IP, it's not a problem. A shitty exploitive contract, not a problem. If they throw money away, that's a good thing. If you haven't done your first game, take whatever shitty deal you can get the game into production, get a launch. As soon as you launch the first game, you're going to be much stronger. So of course there are a lot of things that there are some publishers which are obviously not. I mean, if they bring no money to the table, then I would very rarely sign if there's no skin in the game. So a lot of these publishers which says we do rev share and you come with the game and we do the marketing and so on. If there's no obligations to anything, external marketing costs that they do the creative assets or anything like that, I would stay away screaming, because they could just sign with you and do nothing until you do all the marketing, and then if the game performs, then they might jump. That's what we in those days called the Chilingo model. When premium mobile games was a thing, there was a very famous publisher called Chilingo, and they signed with 100 games each year, and then they did nothing, and then the games that performed well, they pushed the marketing money on those. And I wouldn't say a lot of no development funding publishers are doing that these days, but the risk is that some of them might be doing it, and if there's no skin in the game in the contract, no obligations to money, no development funding, no advance, no nothing, then you are playing a risky game. Apart from that, whatever deal you can make.
One of the first things you said was, do not scale. I am drowning and I'm all by myself.
Yes. I said don't scale above 10 or don't scale above 3 or 6. I would say being alone is not nice. Being 2 to 3 is very nice. Especially if those 2 to 3 can cover a wide area. I would say that the fewer people below 10, around 3, 4, 5 is good team size. Which, if it also means you can stretch your financial runway, you can stretch the money further. Because every time you double in size, you don't double in efficiency. I would say that 8 people will work faster than 12 people, always. You might not have the width, but that is why you might want them to hire outsourcers or freelancers or something like that. But totally alone is hard, but more than 10 is also hard in another way.
Any more questions? Then we're done. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.